up next on our very exciting program, we're going to shift direction a little bit and hear from a really amazing team that is making a speculative fiction podcast. Now, what is speculative fiction?
Well, I think if I try to explain our next podcast, I wouldn't do it justice at all. But I'll let you try a little bit, Melissa.
So this podcast is essentially, in my own words, we will prove whether I'm correct once we hear from them directly. But I think that it's about imagining a future where an alternative kind of story is reality, and that each episode in this podcast transports us to this imagination universe where things are different and helps us escape, if just momentarily, from the sometimes harsh daily life that we have to experience in reality. So this team is an incredible mix of academics, of a drag performer, of a media professional, who are coming together in a panel session to share with us about their thinking behind why speculative fiction is important, how they've come up with their podcast that focuses on trans-feminism and why this voice is very important in the media universe, and also a bit about their journey in making their podcast. It's a new podcast as well. So as we promised, Africa Podcast Day 2022 is a day of leveling up. So without further ado, welcome to the team from the podcast, The Great Tit is a Bird.
Welcome, Karibu Africa Podcast listeners and viewers on the continent and around the world. My name is Ducao. I use they pronouns, and I'm an executive producer and performer in The Great Tit is a Bird, a new sci-fi audio drama that premieres today. Here's series 1 in a sentence. To escape the complicated grief of her mother's death, a girl takes an international job recruiting marginalized teenagers for a research study, then risks their fragile trust by sabotaging the study to prevent them from being exploited. This show probes the compromises and consequences that vulnerable, structurally oppressed people around the world, from public laboratories to private boudoirs, undertake just to survive. It's a trans-feminine sci-fi thriller exploring issues that many of us have witnessed firsthand, including techno-colonization, research misconduct, I'm a researcher in technology, and gender-based violence. So in series 1, it focuses on 17-year-old Renea Mendoza, who's grieving the loss of her mother, who died during a global pandemic, much like the one that we are in. To help Renea recover, her school counselor encourages her to take an electronics internship with a prestigious academic group conducting a research study in the tropical city of Mayaca. There, Renea stumbles on 4 things: an apparent cure for her debilitating skin condition, an immunity to electrocution, a mind-melding contraption, and a group of exploited girls. But when Renea tries to rescue the girls, all of whom have a similar skin condition, she learns that none of the girls want to be rescued, at least not by her. The Great Tit is a Bird is 10 episodes, and each episode is about 20 minutes. It uses found audio design. So it uses voice memos, commercials, voicemail, radio shows, and phone calls. Beyond series 1, which is coming out today, the first half, 5 more limited series will be produced, all set over 4 decades and 3 fictional continents. Each series will focus on the formative years of the major characters, all women of color introduced in the first series. I'll also note that I'm running a timer to make sure that we all stay within schedule. So if you hear a little twinkling sound, that's just my timer going off. Behind the scenes, our cast and creative are also on multiple continents, North America, Europe, Asia, and Africa. Much of the show is particularly inspired by life and culture in East Africa. The show's supervisor, script supervisor, and editor, script consultant, and 2 performers are all Nairobi-based. Their names are underlined on this slide, and they're here with me today to talk a bit about their work towards social justice and equality. So first up, the show's script supervisor and editor, Susan Osiche, uses she, her, hers pronouns. She's the founder and director of Inuakike. After dropping out of school in 2006, Susan registered and sat for the KCSE examination in 2013. Now she's passionate about Inuakike's work with women in her community because of her own educational experience in the slums of Mathare. Susan, so please tell us a bit about your work, script supervising. Oops, that's my timer. Script supervising and editing for the show, particularly in relation to Inuakike's work of supporting girls and women's empowerment.
Thank you so much, Aline.
I think you're muted again.
I'm the founder and director of Inuakike organization. My work for the Great Tit is a bird actually was it was a script supervising and doing the editing for the work, and it was really a great opportunity for me since this is something I've never done before, but working with Aline on this has been a great opportunity for me. Actually, the script relates so much with the work we do in our communities. And it was so easy for me to relate with it since it's something that we relate with in our community. And so actually with what Renea Mendoza in the script, what she was going through could be easy for me to relate with what girls go through in our communities, especially those ones that go through the hurdles and they find their only way out is maybe making some decisions that they are not in line with, just to make sure they get what they want, maybe to fend for their families. So Inuakike is a community-based organization with offices in Mathare, Nairobi, Kenya, that focuses on inclusive women empowerment through education, advocacy, school system retainer programs, and leadership program. Our areas of work include the slum areas of Nairobi, Kenya, and devastated rural areas of Kenya. Our programs are outlined as follows. We do education where we give a second chance to girls who dropped out of secondary school due to early pregnancies, early marriages, or lack of school fees. We also do advocacy where we have projects that are tailored to be school retainers for the girls that are still in school system. Most of these projects we do them in schools, and these are mentorship programs, reproductive health, school uniform distributions. We call it Balisha Kike in Kiswahili, which means cloth a girl child, and also couple tailored, a program for the parents of the girls to create a humble and supportive environment back home for the girls. We also do entrepreneurship program for the parents to give them life and business skills and support them through startups towards financial stability to enable them keep the girls in school. We do leadership program with the leadership project that is tailor-made to push more young women into active leadership, political positions at the political level. This is aimed at solving the two-third gender rule that is still far from realization. This will also help in formulation and implementation of policies that will create a favorable Kenyan community environment for the girl child through the growth system in growth system in Kenya. So with this, it's an ongoing program that we are partnering with Siasa Place, Badili Africa, Tribeless Youth, and Forum Civ. So Inwakike was born through my story, whereby I grew up in Madare community, and it was really difficult for our mom and our parents to take us through school. We are 7 members in our family, and all of us were in school. So my mom used to do a tailoring project, and my dad used to do these small jobs to make sure we get some food on the table. So for us, going through school was really difficult for them to take us all. So by that time, if I wanted to make bad decisions, that is where now I relate so much with Renea Mendoza's story, that there are some times that it comes to you, it makes you make some decisions that you're not in agreement with. And these kind of decisions can either mess up your life or maybe make up your life. So with us, actually what we do is through my story of what I went through, that after I dropped out of secondary school in 2006, and later on came to sit for the Kenya Certificate of Secondary Education in 2013. That is 8 years after dropping out. So getting a job without a certificate was really difficult. So I opted to look for these small jobs in my community so that I could feed my son, my younger son, and also help out with my parents and my siblings as well. So that was really difficult. And when it came to a point where my mom and dad had to separate, they left me with taking care of all our siblings. So I was the one to take care of the bills and do everything in the house. That is when now I realized many girls go through the same thing I was going through. So later on, I decided I should look for someone maybe to help me out to go back to school and get that certificate, because I knew once my job comes to an end, it will be difficult for me to get another job. I met a good Samaritan who helped me out to go back to school to sit for the KCSE examination as the private candidate, and that certificate got me another job when my job at Power 254 came to an end. So I realized many girls like me go through the same thing, the same things I went through in my community in Madare, and so I decided to.
You can wrap it up in a sentence or two.
Okay, so I realized that I should have something to give back to the community, and that is now how Inwakike organization was born. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Susan. It's so great to learn about your story and work from in your own voice.
I had so much to say that I eated in your time.
That is just fine. There's so much you've been doing. Thank you so much. And it would be great to maybe, if there's time at the end to talk a little bit more about it and how some of the characters in the show are very much inspired by your work.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. But for now, next up is Joshua Ogure. And he uses he, him, his pronouns. He contributed his voice to the show, and he is also the general manager of MAP Kibera Trust, the team leader, and a journalist at Kibera News Network. Josh has a wide range of experience working in Nairobi's informal settlements, such as hosting the YouTube live show Sisi Mtani. First, let's hear a brief clip of Josh's audio contribution to The Great Tit is a Bird.
It's Brief Explainer from Empirican Broadcasting Corp. I'm Tyrone Bryant. Today's question is from Jaba and Ukwelu, who asks,
how has climate change impacted disease?
This is a very complex topic, Jaba, but we'll try to explain it briefly. Epidemiologists and conservation scientists argue that when wildland is destroyed, wildlife is forced in closer proximity to humans. As such, when wild animals develop new kinds of diseases, these diseases are more likely to be passed to humans. This was the case with bird bruise and scars, which both originated in birds. To learn more, listen to my upcoming 1-hour special, Climate Change and Disease, on the EBC One app. Thanks for your question, Java. Please join us next time for Brief Explainer from the EBC.
So in this clip, Josh is the caller, but in real life, he is innovating citizen journalism. And we're hoping he can bring his hosting skills to this Brief Explainer show within a show in the upcoming series of The Great Tit is a Bird. So yes, Josh, please tell us about your journalism work.
Thank you very much. My name is Joshua Ogure. I live in Kibera and I come from Kibera. This is one of the largest slums in Africa. So in 2010, we started some mapping in activities in Kibera slum when we realized that our community was labeled as a forest and as a blank spot in the government map. And this kind of triggered us and we said, what can we do in order to map our community? And so we started mapping our area, Kibera slum, and developed the first digital map of Kibera and broken it down into different topics like health, security, water and sanitation, and even education. So after doing this, we asked ourselves, so what? We have all these maps showing all these topics. What else can we do so that people can start interacting with the maps, so that people can start talking about some of the issues highlighted by the maps we have produced? So that's when we came up with the idea of starting a channel called Kibera News Network. It's a YouTube channel where we will now give people a platform to air their voices, a platform to talk about issues affecting them, and including issues, some of the issues that had been highlighted by the maps. So we started Kibera News Network, and a group of youths had to be trained from Kibera so that they can be able to tell their own stories using a small handheld flip camera, using minimal equipment, minimal resources that we could get at our hands. So people learned how to do stories and walk around interviewing people and giving people an opportunity, a chance to talk about these issues that they felt were important to them. Another reason why we started Kibera News Network was because most of the times international media or even mainstream media will come down to Kibera to tell our stories in a way that we didn't feel okay with. So we felt like that some stories were told in a way that we didn't like. And so we wanted to be able to tell our own stories in our own perspective. And so that's one reason why we started Kibera News Network, so that we can tell it by ourselves, or sometimes correct the stories that are told wrongly by others, so that we can get a chance to counter them. So it has been a journey. It has been a journey, and we've been interacting with Kibera people in the slum, and we've also expanded our horizon sometimes to do stories in other slums like Mathare, Mukuru, and even Kangemi. These are other informal settlements in Nairobi. So people in Kibera, for example, have been good with us because they trust us. They know that we are one of them, we are part of them. And so whenever we are doing a story, they feel comfortable with us because we are not just another stranger coming in to do a story, but we are part of the community. We understand the challenges and we are part of the solution. We want to give a solution. And a lot of times people of Kibera feel like there have been a lot of social injustices that happen to them, especially from the government. And so it's also a platform for them to talk about these issues, to air their grievances and see that something is done. And so after doing our stories, we try to link them up to the relevant responders, relevant authorities for action, relevant policymakers, so that something can get to be done about them. And so over time, we introduced something called Humans of Kibera. This is a photographic website whereby we take a photograph of individuals sharing their personal stories. and we caption them, a sentence or two of what they are saying. So this has been easier for people who cannot access internet to be able to also listen or read what other people are saying or stories from other people. And so over time, we've also been involved in all the elections in Kenya since 2013, 2017, and we are looking forward to do the upcoming election in 2022. So Kibera News Network has been the channel on the ground for other media houses to come and check what's happening on the ground. Or sometimes we get the first-hand information that we share with them. COVID came and affected our work, but we had to stay put. And so we had to change our ways of doing things somehow. And so you realize that people had to work from home. And that time we had to introduce something called Kibera News Network broadcast, WhatsApp broadcast, where we would let people share information with us and also ask questions. Some people would send in videos and also audio recordings. We would also send audio clips of what's happening just to inform people of what's going on and how they should carry out themselves and how they can avoid being exposed to COVID virus. And most recently, we introduced Sisi Mtaani. Sisi Mtaani means as our neighborhood, us in our neighborhood. So this is another opportunity for people now just to talk about themselves. It's a YouTube live kind of program that I run in Kibera each and every week on Thursdays, 2 p.m. So I bring different people from different parts of Kibera doing different amazing stuff, and just to let them share their own stories. People may think that they know each other, but if you listen to someone talk, then you realize, oh, I didn't know you do this. I didn't know you went through this and that. I didn't know you didn't like this or like this particular thing. So it has been nice, and people engaging online and commenting on YouTube and talking and seeing the people they know. It has just been awesome to bring different people and see these different images of people talking on their own perspective. So we say giving people an opportunity to tell their own stories in their own perspective. Stories by us, with us, and for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Josh. Yes, and if we have time, I have so many questions and would love to talk a little bit more about how your work has inspired the show. But for now, we'll move on to Francesca. So our final panelist today is Francheska Njanja, they, them, theirs pronouns. Francesca is a performing artist and a sexual health rights advocate for the SOGI, Sexual Orientation, Gender Identity and Expression community in Nairobi, Kenya. Their work is community-based, engaging young folks in the informal settlements of Nairobi. Francesca is expanding LGBTQ GNC plus representation on the continent, which interests me since I identify as non-binary and am interested in how media techniques can be used to blur gender lines and make them more fluid, as you might be able to hear with the use of pitch shifting of the two main characters in this clip. Let's take a listen.
Renea, I am so sorry, but I cannot leave Baltimore yet. You probably heard there is trouble with the teacher, Mr. Johnson. So the board requested that all the counselors work on site while they investigate. But do not worry, a taxi will be waiting for you at Mayaka Airport and will take you straight to Nsito Community Center, where Medina will meet you.
Hi Renea, it's Medina, your summer roommate. Dr. Monamye asked me to meet you at NCC. I apologize, I'll be 10 minutes late. See you soon.
Great. So Francesca, please tell us about your work, particularly in these striking images.
Okay, thank you so much, Aline. I'm also happy to really join other members of the podcast because you have never engaged in such a space. And I'm so happy to let them know my work in the arts and the role that art plays in my work as a sexual health rights advocate. So in Kenya, people who do not conform to the heteronormative way of our society usually face violence in all forms, and most of the time we don't have protection by the state. Even if those rights exist in our constitution, most of the time we don't see them reflecting in our daily lives or how we experience our lives as gender minorities. So through my work as a sexual health rights activist, it was influenced by the things I was seeing or what I went through as I was growing up in the rural areas and not really feeling there was something that was really missing in my life. I could not express myself the way I wanted. So I moved to Nairobi, and in Nairobi I found a sense of belonging within my community. And my first entry was in the joining the gay and gender diverse people who are working in the trying to advocate and to talk to the Ministry of Health on how they could be accommodated as key populations because of the health issues they were facing in the area of HIV, and also trying to kind of look for hospitals or healthcare where they could have healthcare providers who are really respecting our identities, our expression, and stuff like that. So that's why I found a performing artist, and we started to perform our genders and stuff and trying to really confront gender stereotypes that we have been socialized like, to believe that a certain gender must act for in a certain way. So I start by saying in Kenya, in the legal part, there exists a penal code in section 162 and 65 that really is very brutal to people who do not conform to what the society says that a man should have sex with a woman or a certain person who was born. Take for example, if you are born a male, you should take male men characteristics or behavior. So for me, art played a very big role to really confront and to push back against all those gender stereotypes and how they intersect in sexual health aspects in our spaces. So the photos you are seeing is a project that we were doing. We were calling it the House of Evolutionary Drag. And drag art is an art that is usually performed by different genders. And we were trying to like infuse it within our way, in our Kenyan queering, where we could celebrate our queerness as Kenyans, and we were honoring the freedom fighters. And this is an event that we did on 1st June of 2019. It was called, it is a day that we commemorate the Madaraka Day, and we dubbed it as Madraga Day, like we infused it with the drag art, and that's my photo there. I was doing a character formation for one of the freedom fighters called Wangu Wamakeri, who confronted the gender stereotypes of women who played a very big role in the freedom struggle towards our independence in Kenya. And the other photos are my fellow performing artists. Some of them were performing another great freedom fighter called Nekatili Wamenza. The other one was performing freedom fighter from the land of Kamba, I think called Ducao or something like that. So the other photo that I'm seated is a photo that I was trying to character form a performance by Whitney Houston. And now you can see drag art is usually mostly internationally recognized. And now we were trying to infuse it and bring it home infuse it with our real lived realities and to celebrate our, like, reimagining our journey in the freedom struggle of our country, and to form that resilience that really identifies with our lived reality. So that's a very great part of our work in the art, and how it's performed, and how art plays a very big role in our work, because to get a space where people can really get sexual health services without being discriminated, without facing stigma. Because most of the communities that I do with are gay men, trans men, and trans women, and they don't get well served in the mainstream hospital. So finding spaces where we can have healthcare providers who have been identified to really understand our way of accessing these services is something that really intersects with art and health, and that has been great working with my community. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Francesca. It's really amazing to see these images and hear about your work, both as an educator, an advocate, and then also as a performer. I love drag, in case you didn't.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, great. So I think we have time for a few more questions. We have about 10 minutes. First of all, I'm wondering if the panelists have questions for each other or questions for me about the podcast. I'd love to chat a little bit more about any of your questions.
Yeah, thank you, Aline. I just would love to commend you for the good job. I think I really loved when I listened to this podcast. I was like, wow, this is just like another radio station, and things are well put together, and it's flowing really nice. Like you want to listen and listen till the end. So congratulations for that. And I have a question for Francesca. How is the situation now? Like in Kenya, LGBT community have really been having a rough time, like you said. But do you think things are changing now? Do you think people are starting to accept and things are improving slowly? Or are things still really tough for you guys?
Okay, thank you very much, Joshua, for your question. And for the LGBTQ plus community situation in Kenya, it varies from different cities, and I'm well versed with the Nairobi part of it. I can say that it has changed because we have a lot of people who are now coming out and really showing their authenticity through art, through legal areas, and through health, as compared to how I was seeing it when I started. That is a plus for me, and I'm feeling my work has not been in vain when I see young people who are having it easy compared to how when I started and how it was hard to really live like authentically self, and that is commendable. The negative side is that it varies. Sometimes the violence goes high, especially right now when the campaigns are hitting on because of the upcoming general election, and we are worried. So we are trying to tell our community to tone it down. You can live your authentic self, but still take care for others. And because when elections and campaigns are taking momentum, we usually face a lot of violent cases from our community. And when the elections are over, then we usually see a relatively peaceful environment for our community. So that's it for now. And thank you for your question.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Francesca. I see Susan's unmuting.
Yeah, for me, I just wanted to actually commend you, Aline, for the good work. When I first listened to the podcast, I was a bit confused because this is something new to my ears, and it's something different. Actually, you've done it in a different way. And I also want to commend Josh and Francesca on their work on this Tit is the Bird. And at first, I never even, in my thoughts, I didn't even know, Josh, you were in this thing. And the way Aline told me that, do you know one of the the people who are talking on that podcast? One is Josh, and I was like, how? I couldn't even get the picture that you are the one who was taking up the role. And also, Francesca, you guys have done this thing in a different way. And also in the work that you do in your communities, you're doing a great job. So let's continue uplifting each other. Thanks, Aline.
Thanks, Susan. Yes, Susan was very surprised that Josh and Francesca were at the show.
Yes, I was really and I couldn't even reach out to Josh to ask him, are you the one in the podcast? I kept on, I wanted to actually hear him talk here so that I get now to understand which where was he actually speaking in the podcast, and now I get it, and I'm still confused. Actually, I'm still confused.
I think that means that maybe, Josh, you have an alternate career option as a voice actor.
Yeah, I'll explore it out.
You too, Francesca, and hopefully we'll get Susan's voice in here on the front end. But it's been so helpful to have Susan go through the scripts, particularly, you know, with being such an advocate for women and girls, and that's a huge theme in this show. Women, girls, you know, and people of all kinds of feminine identity, trans feminine identity as well. Okay, so I was going to ask you one more question, but I think we're running out of time. So I think we will leave it there for now and leave it open for the audience to ask us questions in the second half of this session. Joshua, Francesca, and Susan. Our audience, thank you so much for listening and watching today. And Melissa and Josephine of Africa Podfest for giving us the opportunity to share our work. We'll leave you with the trailer for The Great Tit is a Bird and revisit some of the art we've developed for the show. And you see our contact information, our social media handles here. Thank you so much. Thanks again to Josh, Francesca, and Susan. Bye. And yes, bye-bye. Okay. Okay, I know Susan has to go. I think I'll stop recording and